I'm George Van Vlaanderen. I'm co-owner and operator with my wife, Kristen Doolin of Doe's Leap Farm. We milk 42 alpine goats and produce all of that milk into Vermont's only certified organic goat cheese and kefir. We also do some sausages and have a whey-fed pork operation along with a self-serve farm store.
I'm your host, Andy Chamberlain, and I take you behind the scenes to learn how farmers are building their business in sustainable agriculture. These farmer-to-farmer interviews cover a wide range of topics from cropping systems, marketing channels, lifestyle decisions, and lessons learned along the way. One ask I have for you is if you can leave a comment or write a review. There's a feature enabled right now called Fan Mail, so you can send a message via text to the podcast right from the link in the description. These come through as anonymous, so if you want to be known or would like me to reply, let me know who you are in the message. Give it a whirl. It's quick, easy, and free, and I'd love to hear from you. Today's episode comes to you from Bakersfield, Vermont, where we visit with George Van Vlaanderen of Doe's Leap Farm. He shares how they developed the farm from raw wooded land while raising children, goats, and living in a yurt all at the same time over 20 years ago. He shares now how their grazing systems has evolved using electronet fences to wireless collars and how he's improving biodiversity of his pastures using the Vermont rip sower. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy this episode.
Yeah, I'm George Van Vlaanderen. I am co-owner of Doe's Leap Farm, and we are in Bakersfield, Vermont. And we milk 42 goats and process all of that milk into cheese and kefir. And we also have a side business of raising pastured pigs and making sausage.
I didn't know you did pigs too.
Yeah, small scale.
Yep. Yeah, that's good. How'd you get started farming?
I studied agricultural economics at UVM, and I had planned to do the Peace Corps after graduating, and I met my wife, Kristen, who is now my farming partner as well, and I couldn't do Peace Corps with her. We weren't married, so we ended up moving to Ecuador with no real plan other than we wanted to work in farming. And we ended up working for the Austrian equivalent of USAID. So we were living with a couple from Uruguay, and we were working with these Colombian folks, and our job was to help farmers in the Andes kind of diversify into market vegetables. So they had a good cattle operation, and so we were helping them kind of start and maintain market gardens for income diversification. So anyway, we did that for about a year, and then we came back to the States, and we both started at the University of Maine, the Sustainable Ag program. So the vision was to get our master's, and at least my vision was to end up going to get my PhD and do ag research and teach. But about a year into the program, I kind of realized that I'd rather do agriculture rather than study it.
Yeah.
I was doing some work on dairy farms, and anyway, I said to my wife, Kristen, how about we start a dairy farm? And she said, well, I had a goat as a kid. How about goats instead? And so I'm like, okay, that sounds good. We had no idea what we were doing. So we ended up finishing our master's, and right before we defended our theses, we ended up purchasing this piece of land here in Bakersfield. So it's 130 acres. There's nothing on here, no infrastructure at all. We were living in a yurt for 2 years at the University of Maine, well, outside of Oronon. So we picked up our yurt and moved it onto this property. Kristen's uncle rented a bulldozer and roughed in our driveway, and we got electric up here, and we lived in our yurt, and we started building our farm with no clue as to what we were doing in every aspect. Building, goat rearing, and we just kind of forged ahead from there.
Learning as you went.
Yeah.
So how long have you been raising goats here on this property?
So we bought the farm, this piece of land in 97. So we started building, and we had goats. We had 4 goats right off the bat, which was not a good move. The thought was, we were going to like practice making cheese while we were building our facility. And it was ultimately, a distraction and just something we probably should not have done. But anyway, we got our goats in 97. We built our facility. We ended up moving out of the yurt. We lived with our daughter was born in 99, and we moved into an apartment above our cheese facility and got licensed that same year, so 99. So we're 26 years in as a licensed facility, 26 plus.
It's a busy startup.
Oh, yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy.
Yeah. Not uncommon.
Yeah,
that's for sure. So what are your primary markets for your products?
So Burlington is a big market for us, and when we were looking for land, we set a 1-hour drive radius around Burlington, which was probably the smartest thing we did. So we identified that as our primary market. So we deliver to Burlington once a week, to both healthy living stores, City Market. We sell cheese through the Farmhouse Group and their various restaurants. We also have a local distributor, Pumpkin Village Foods, that goes to kind of the outlying areas, Middlebury Co-op and Hunger Mountain, and so they come here once a week. We also have a distributor who specializes in organic cheeses. He sends a truck up from New Jersey probably once every 3 weeks. And that gets, I don't know where that cheese goes. It goes all over the country. I don't know.
Wow.
And then lastly, we sell some cheese through Farmers to You, which is a organization that takes Vermont products, brings them down to the Boston area, and sells products down there through an online system.
Yeah.
People can pre-order and pick up their goods.
Nice. Well, that's a pretty far reach.
Yeah. No, it's worked out well.
That's good.
Yeah.
And some retail sales here in your farm store.
Yeah. So we attended the Burlington Farmers Market for probably, I think, 23 years. And a big part of our business at that market was selling sausages. So I mentioned that we have a sideline business. So probably 15 years ago or so, I decided I wanted to do sausage, and I started experimenting with recipes. And part of the impetus was we have, these retired milkers that we didn't have a good market for. And so the idea was to make goat sausage, and sell it at the farmer's market. And I figured that I probably should sample it because people weren't going to be too into goat sausage. So I ended up getting a small grill, and I thought, oh, well, if I have a grill, I might as well sell some sausage sandwiches. And I ended up not having to sample at all. It just kind of, people smelled the sausage grilling, and, it took off, and we diversified into, we got up to 6 different varieties of pork sausage in addition to this goat sausage. And so that was, a thriving part of our business for about 8 to 10 years at the farmer's market. So we sold our cheese, we sold pork cuts, we sold frozen sausages, and we sold these sandwiches. Well, during COVID, that all dried up. We couldn't sell prepared foods there. and we had about $50,000 of pork inventory in our freezers. So that was part of the impetus to start kind of a self-serve farm store. And so that has remained, and we ended up just not going back to the farmer's market. It was just such a quality of life change that I never would have envisioned. It was the most profitable part of our farm, and we still opted not to go back. We took a 1-year sabbatical, so we paid our fees and thought, let's just give it one more year, because it's all based on
your spot.
Yeah, we hold our spot, and we were one of the senior members, so we had a really good spot. And we just made the decision not to go back, and so we have this little farm store. It's a fraction of the income and even a smaller fraction of the work. So we no longer do grilled sausages, but we sell cheese and frozen pork and sausages in the farm store.
Nice.
Yeah.
How many pigs do you raise?
So, during the height of the farmer's market, we were doing up to 30 pigs a year. We probably do, 6 to 10 maybe at the most that we move through the store.
So that seems like a few pigs goes a long ways.
Yeah. I mean, they're, yes, we grow them out to pretty heavy hanging weight. So they hang, to 200 plus, 220, 230. So we're getting a lot of meat per pig, and we can use a lot of that fat in our sausages too. It's a good system. And so we also, the pigs play an important role in terms of our overall farm management. So we actually pump all of the whey from our cheese operation out to the pigs on pasture. So they're using this, what would be a waste product for most cheese operations. And it's a great source of pig nutrition. It's high in protein, and so that's an important piece. And then we are also using the pigs to renovate pasture land. So we will move them probably once a week, and then we will kind of go over that area where they've been with some minimal, very basic tillage with the tractor, and then we broadcast seed more desirable species that will grow up and provide better pasture for our goats, and you have the fertility from the pigs. So it's a really good system, and it fits well into our overall farming system.
Yeah. Are you raising those pigs, or are you bringing in young?
All piglets, yeah. Even when we were doing a lot of piglets or a lot of pigs, we decided never to have sows on the property. And I think unless you're at scale, that's a way to really lose some money.
Simplifies that process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have a particular breed of pig that you like, or?
No, I mean, I kind of try to find pigs that are available. We get a lot of pigs from our butcher, Tony Bro's Market up in North Troy. We're not too picky.
Yeah. Goats, on the other hand.
Goats we're picky with, yeah. I mean, we have a closed herd. We have alpine goats. And yes, we are constantly selecting animals that do well in our pasture-based system, and that's something we focused on since the beginning. So most goat dairies are either fully confinement, meaning they're in the barn 24/7, or if not, they often have kind of a loafing pasture or a couple of different pastures. So the goats are turned out, and they're kind of on this same piece of land for, often weeks at a time. And so part of my focus in grad school was cow grazing management. And so right off the bat, we decided that we wanted to have our goats out on pasture and provide a fresh paddock of grass for them every 12 hours, excuse me. So after every milking, they get a fresh piece of grass or we've moved increasingly towards browse, which is more broadleaf species, and that's really been a big focus of our operation from the beginning. And there's been a lot of learning on that front, but in the last year, we got a grant from DBIC to purchase a virtual fencing system for our animals. So starting in July of 2024, we got these collars for the goats, and I think we're the second goat dairy in the U.S. that has pioneered this technology. And that's been a complete game changer for us.
So it's found a home here.
Yeah, it's incredible technology. It has saved us a ton of labor. So we were moving electric net fencing, as I said, twice a day.
Yeah.
How
many feet of that?
So we have high tensile fencing, 6-strand high tensile fencing all around our farm. So we utilize that as well. We tie into that. So we were moving a minimum of 2 to 3 nets, 165 feet long, twice daily, and moving the water as well. And then, as I mentioned, we kind of started off on, grazing goats on pasture, and they're really much more suited to grazing or browsing, which is they prefer broadleaf species, stump sprouts, forbs, broadleaf plants. But it's very difficult to drag fence through that terrain, which we did to an extent. But the virtual fencing, we simply open up an app on our phone and draw a paddock or a virtual fence around any area on our farm. And we utilize our 2 border collies to drive the goats out to that virtual pasture, and we provide water out there. And it's been amazing. And it's also, we found we have an unexpected result is we are getting anywhere from about a 10 to 15% boost in milk production as a result of using this technology.
Oh, interesting.
Because we are able, so like generally, when you're moving animals around a farm, you have all of your infrastructure, net fence and watering systems in one area of your farm, and you tend to move sequentially through the farm, so to speak. And with the virtual fencing, we kind of divorced ourselves from that, and we can look at areas that we think are going to provide the best feed for our animals. And so we can simply move them on a dime. So we set up a new paddock anywhere we want. And then the border collies are like these, guided missiles that we can just, direct the goats wherever we want, whenever we want. And we put them in those areas, and, it's just... And part of that is, during the summer, shade is a big part of keeping animals comfortable and productive. So we really kind of dial in goat comfort and feed value with this technology.
So it's like this morning's a little cooler, a little cloudier, so you can put them in that open area where there might be a little less shade.
Yeah, so this time of year, it's interesting. We still utilize pasture, especially early and late season for our goats, so traditional grass pasture. But as we move into September, the browse quality starts to decline. So we are right now the goats are 100% on browse and have been pretty much all of August and July. And what that, during that time, our pastures, especially now, because with this drought, our pastures are growing slowly, and we're kind of saving that pasture land for September and October, late September and October grazing. So we're kind of building up this resource and utilizing this other declining resource to the ultimate benefit of the animals and our profitability.
Is there, do the goats have to get used to or taper into going from browse to pasture, or is that green enough material? It's not like hay to green pasture.
Correct.
Right?
Yep. No, it's a seamless. There's no real transition, so to speak. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
Got it.
So they're eating.
Because they're different, but it's
That's
close enough.
correct.
Okay. I'm familiar with the virtual fencing because I've seen it talked about and whatnot. But for those that don't know, like, does every goat have a collar? How do they know where the boundary is?
Yeah.
Do they get shocked?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So we, as part of this grant, we actually produce a series of videos on the training process and how we utilize the technology. So if you want real specifics, you can get on our Instagram or YouTube and kind of check out some of those videos. But basically, every goat has a collar. It has a solar panel on the collar that charges the battery. And basically, we set the perimeter up on our phone, and as the goats approach that perimeter of the fence, they get this sound, an increasing volume and frequency of sound. So it's beep, 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 beep. So as soon as they start to hear that, they know, and they just simply know to turn around. So it took us a surprisingly short amount of time to train the goats. I want to say it took us, it took us about, I want to say 3 days to have the herd fully trained to this virtual fencing system. And there's the company recommends a system by which you train them, which includes having physical fence on 3 sides and just one virtual boundary. So they kind of are just interacting with one boundary.
That makes sense.
And also the virtual fence is around the physical boundary as well. So they're getting that feedback as well, but they can't, obviously, since it's electrified, the fence is electrified.
They're trained to that one already.
Yeah, so they are kind of getting this feedback, and they just they pick it up, very quickly. And then also, we also have to charge the collars on occasion. So every goat really doesn't need to have a collar because they are responding to the herd's signals. So they hear that signal from another collar, and they're just conditioned to turn around.
Right.
So it's been, we would never have invested in this technology simply because we have, tens of thousands of dollars in fencing investment already. And this is, it's not cheap. They're about $200 plus a collar, maybe up to $250. Plus you pay, I think it's around $1,000 a month. $1,000, maybe $1,000 to $1,200 a year for our 42 goat milking herd. So it's fairly substantial investment, but having utilized the technology and realized like how powerful and profitable it is for us, both in terms of labor and milk production, it in retrospect, it's, if we had to pay for it from the beginning, it would be a worthwhile investment for us.
That's good feedback.
Yeah, it's been, and as I said, the part of the grant process is that I'm kind of posting videos. I just make some videos on my phone and mainly post them on Instagram and Facebook, but we've gotten almost 250,000 views on this just the fencing videos alone, the virtual fencing. And so there's, people are kind of hungry for this information and technology.
Like you said, you weren't even really expecting the yield boost either.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of, the message too, at least for our, and in our situation too, our milk is, we have pretty high value milk. I mean, we're not selling fluid milk. We're processing it all into cheese. So even small boosts in production can make a big difference.
It's a multiplier,
Yeah, in terms of profitability. But I'll just mention that a big piece for me. One of the things I'm passionate about, and what is key both to our grazing system prior to the collars and also with the collars, is the use of border collies to move goats efficiently to and from pasture. And that's a particular interest of mine, and something that I feel is like just a major efficiency boost that's almost incalculable, that I feel like, is left on the table for a lot of farms. I think people look at these dogs moving goats seamlessly and they think that's like magic and that could never happen. But the fact of the matter is these dogs are just bred over millennia to kind of do this job. And I've trained all of the dogs in our farm with no prior experience, made tons of mistakes, but it's like it's possible for anyone to get a dog and train it up and move cows, sheep, goats, etc. Around and really save some time and effort.
I know dog breeds are very, some are more trained or inclined to a certain behavior from the beginning. So I know border collies are known for herding dogs. So how do they have a good instinct of doing that? Like, do they pick up things quickly?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
I have a hound dog. He's really hard to train.
Yeah, I mean, border collies are very, they're obviously very intelligent animals. They're very biddable. But they're very, depending on the dog, they're also just very driven. So it can be a challenge to kind of temper their drive and to get them to tune into the handler and also not kind of tamp down that instinct. You want to encourage that instinct. But I would argue that if your interest is moving animals, moving livestock, border collies are the breed to have.
Did you find a specific breeder, or did you just find a border collie and know you could work with it?
We fortunately adopted a dog early on in our farming career, and he had been trained somewhat on sheep, so had some foundation, and we had to kind of do some additional training with goats. They're pretty different. Sheep are much more flighty, and goats tend to be much stronger in resisting the dog. But to answer your question, it's mainly been, we try to have two dogs at all times. We don't necessarily need two dogs to move our animals, but we absolutely need one dog. So If we get a dog that's injured, we always have another dog ready to do the job. And so we tend to, when a dog passes away, the younger dog is probably around 6 or so we usually get a puppy at that stage. Right. So there's no pressure to get that puppy up and working since we have a good dog. So to answer your question, we kind of just try to find well-bred dogs. Mm-hmm. So there's the New England Border Collie Association. We've gotten several dogs from David Kennard in New Hampshire. He's a great breeder. The last two dogs we've purchased are what are called trial dogs. So there's a vibrant trialing, program or all over the Northeast. So they have these sheep trials where people compete. They bring their dogs and they go through these trialing competitions. Yeah. So we've found several dogs just from trialers. So we find them where we can, and we want to make sure they have really good working background. That's the main thing.
Thinking about back to the fence, if you were just getting into goat dairy production, do you think it would be quite easy to start out with a virtual fencing system?
I do, absolutely. And I think, one of the real benefits of this technology is, ag land in Vermont is just so expensive right now. And the interesting part of this technology with goats in particular is, you could buy forest land. You could just simply buy 30 acres of forest land and hire a mechanical harvester to come in and log a good portion of that. This is what I would do. If I was starting
if you were
off,
starting now,
I would, I wanted to get into dairying goats. I would buy an undeveloped piece of forest land. I would hire a logger to come in, and I would mark trees that I want to keep. So we're really into silvopasture, and the idea is to kind of keep these climax vegetation species like hard maple and red oak, beech, select various trees and basically cut down everything else. And then you're going to get a whole lot of stump sprouts and forbs and really good feed over the next several years coming up in that land.
Right.
And the trick then is, how do you fence it? Well, that's where the virtual fencing comes in. So with essentially no infrastructure other than this technology, you could kind of be up and running. And the other piece, and especially relevant now, is we are in a serious drought. I mean, we haven't had significant rainfall for over a month. We got some last night, but pastures are declining in value if available at all. NOFA is now kind of giving waivers to organic farms to say, okay, the pasture is declining, so you don't have, you get a waiver to pasture your animals this time of year. So at any rate, when like drought that's just not, all of those stump sprouts and all of those forbs just perform so much better in a drought. In addition to that, what we started doing when we were clearing land for our goats is we simply fell trees. So we would down trees, the goats would just defoliate all of those trees, and we would cut up the rest for firewood. And, we heat our home, and we also heat our pasteurizer and all of our hot water from wood that we've harvested from the land, which more often than not has been defoliated by our goats, which then, a year or two later, you're getting these stump sprouts. So it's this very kind of synergistic, efficient system. But anyway, the point being that this technology, I would argue, could really lower the entrance into ag, especially goat dairying, by ostensibly lowering the cost of land. So instead of buying a developed piece of land with existing pasture, you have this opportunity to kind of come in at a much lower per acre rate and make a go of it.
Do you think, what do you think of the current market right now? Like, do you think there's a lot of open space available for new goat farms in the Northeast, or?
You're talking about the market for cheese itself?
Yeah, just like the industry.
Yeah, that's hard to say. We've been at it for so long that I don't, we have these existing accounts.
Right.
I'm not out there peddling cheese.
Yeah.
I will say that since we were one of the first kind of small dairies to start cheese making in the state, there were certainly a handful of farms existing that were around, but since then the cheese industry has really blossomed. So I think the competition is heavier since we started. And when we started, our cheese was pretty good at best. We were kind of figuring it out, and it was kind of like this novel thing, and people were like, "Oh, sure," restaurants, and they were all kind of open to it, and it was
unique.
It was good enough, and thankfully we upped our game as we're learning everything, obviously. But I think that's changed now, because there's a lot of really high quality good cheese on the market. So I think it's tighter. The competition is tighter. But I get a sense that, there is market available, depending on the strategy. And
I see it as a great use of Vermont's landscape, rocky, rugged, wooded terrain.
Yeah.
Like, that seems like a good way to make some use of the woods.
Absolutely, yeah.
Even if the trees are tapped, I would think that could also work.
Yeah,
well
I think
together.
there's some maybe there's some research out of Cornell. It's been a few years, but they had been using goats to kind of clear, help clear some of the understory in competition for sugar maple. But yeah, I totally agree.
What did you envision your farm would look like when you started?
Oh man, no vision. We were just fighting, just fighting to stay alive. I mean, we
just knew it involved goats.
Yeah, I mean, well, we had that vision. We knew that we wanted to milk goats and make cheese. And beyond that, it was a day-to-day struggle. We had 2 young kids. I started off working off farm, so I was a teacher for 10 years. So yeah, I mean, I was working full time, and at least during the school year, and my wife was on the farm trying to figure stuff out. We had interns right from the very beginning. We built a cabin, so that was helpful. And yeah, it was just a day-to-day thing that eventually we kind of matured and progressed out of that triage stage. And so other than the goats and the cheese, I couldn't have envisioned what life would be like 20 years in the future.
Right.
Where we're gonna like get out of this 80-hour a week schedule.
Yeah.
And yeah, thankfully we have, which is good.
Yeah. Do you have employees now?
Yeah. So our original piece of property was we bought 130 acres, and then 15 years ago, the adjacent farm came on the market, and that has a house, a few barns, and 25 acres. So we ended our intern program in favor of a part-time employee who lives in that house, and it's part of their compensation. And they are milking five mornings a week, and then they do the majority of the cheese and sausage processing. So, and that was a positive development for us. Interns were great. They're obviously weren't very costly. We're basically feeding them and providing them an education. But it was a lot of labor to keep an intern busy. We tried to do a really good job in exposing them to every part of the farm and make it, really worth their while. So now we have an employee who simply, they know their job, they go in and do it. There's very little management, and it frees up our time to kind of dial in management in other areas of the farm. Yeah. We have a part-time employee who lives on the farm in their own house, and then we have another part-time employee who milks 5 to 7 shifts a week. So that's been a super positive quality of life change for us, simply not milking as much as we used to. So that's milking's about an hour and 20 to 30 minutes, twice a day. So it's my wife and me. We're now full-time. I quit my job in 2008. And then two part-time employees.
That's like a significant number of hours of the day if you were doing it all yourselves.
Yeah.
It's 3 hours just milking.
Yep. And what would happen is, we start milking at 6:30 and in the morning, and then we milk at 5:30 at night. And, of course, we're just working throughout the day.
Yeah, right.
So
doing other things.
you're looking at a 14-hour day just right off the bat,
every day.
Right there. So yeah, it really frees up some time, not just for work, but just for, pleasure and relaxation and,
anything other than moving and milking.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That seems pretty quick, to an hour and a half for 40 some odd goats.
Yeah. Even, and it gets even faster because, goats, like humans and cows, have a lactation curve. So they kind of peak at about 8 weeks after they have their babies, and then the milk production declines. And then, another thing is we do what's called extended lactations with our goats. So traditionally, goats are they have very seasonal estrus cycles. So unlike cows, they come into heat mainly from October to through November, and so all of the goats are bred in that window, and they all have their babies in March. So back in the day, we were milking over 50 goats, and they were bred all at the same time, and we would have 100 plus babies in a 3-week period, and it was brutal. So we had come across some research, I think it's from Langston University, and I think it's in Oklahoma, maybe almost 17 years ago, which looked at what are called extended lactations, which is instead of breeding a goat, so the gestation of a goat is 5 months. So we generally would breed them in October, milk them through December, give them 2 months rest, and then they would have their babies. So instead of breeding those goats, you simply continue to milk them. Mm-hmm. So you're milking them for essentially 2 years. So we decided to take half of our herd on that cycle, and the other half would be bred. So instead of breeding 50 goats, we were breeding 25. 25 would be on this extended lactation, and they would flip-flop. So at the end of the extended lactation, they would get bred, have their babies, and it's that I would argue is one of the real game changers for us in terms of profitability and efficiency for a number of reasons. One is, I mentioned the babies. Goat kids are a real liability. I mean, you're having these animals, there's just not a great market for them. You're feeding them costly milk. It's a huge amount of labor. So instead of trying to move 100 goats, you are moving, half that.
Yep.
So that's number one. The second thing is, we have cash flow year round, which is good. So our products are on the shelf. And then thirdly, in terms of these extended lactations, the goats who have gone through this extended lactation are using a lot less energy to produce that milk compared to an average of 2.2 goat kids. So they have more than twins on average, and it takes a lot of energy to produce that amount of baby in 5 months. So what happens is at the end of that extended lactation, the goats come into they give birth, and they generally have much better body condition, which means they are milking better, and they're more productive and healthier. So it's this multiple win.
And you have continuous milk.
And we have continuous milk. So there's the less babies, constant cash flow. Our products aren't leaving the shelves for a series of months where someone could say, oh, let's try this kefir instead. And then finally, goat health and productivity has been a big bonus.
Makes sense. Kind of gives them a chance to re-strengthen and relax a little longer. Even though they're still getting milked, they're not going through the birthing process.
Yeah, they're just using a lot. Yeah, they're just using a lot less energy to produce that milk, and they are producing a lot. And that research, what it showed was that they produce a lot less fluid. Well, certainly significantly less fluid milk.
Right.
But the solids, the fat and the protein, pounds of fat and protein over that extended lactation was not statistically different from 2 standard lactations. Okay, so they're producing the same fat and protein, which is what we care about as cheesemakers. So yeah, it's been a good thing for us.
News to me.
Yeah, you're a veggie guy.
Yeah, exactly. You've talked a lot about it already, but what does sustainable agriculture mean to you, and what are you doing to achieve it?
I guess there's a lot to unpack there. I think when most people think about sustainable agriculture, they think about maintaining resources on the land and enhancing soil quality, pasture, and just, ideally making the farm better than when you find it or when we started farming. So that's, I'll pause there and say, what our focus has been with that, especially recently. And there are other pieces too, the economic piece, which I think is as important, if not more important for farmers. But in terms of the environmental piece and soil quality, we have been involved with a group called Land Care Cooperative. It's a group of farmers who are basically looking at improving soil quality, water holding capacity, ideally building organic matter through a variety of different means, one of which was we received a grant to purchase what's called a rip sower. This was a piece of technology developed by Abe Collins and some other farmers up to 20 years ago. And that has been commercialized into various iterations of this rip sower, which is essentially a pasture renovation tool that in one pass subsoils, so you're breaking up a plow pan or the hard pan that has been caused by glaciation all over Vermont. You don't need to have plows to create that. So it's breaking that plow pan, it's depositing seed, and also at the same time there's we have a biostimulant and fertilizer that we're adding to that furrow. So you're going through a pasture, you're ripping up a very small furrow, dropping seed, opening up the plow pan, and we are focusing on really deep-rooted plants like alfalfa, burnet, chicory, red clover. And the idea is that when you break up that plow pan and you're using these deep-rooted forbs and legumes, you're actually kind of accessing a lot of nutrients below that plow pan and moisture. And so when that happens, you have this root development that is kind of colonizing this new territory, so to speak. And there's all sorts of root exudates and microbial interactions that happen as a result of this. And so we've seen some amazing benefits to our land, which tends to be very well drained. And so we've done several passes with this rip sower, and some of our hayland was just almost primarily orchard grass. The quality was not very good, and we have really just turned around the quality, the moisture holding capacity, just dramatically. And also the part of that piece is trying to diversify, have as many plant families as possible. So when you get beyond, there's some really good research, when you get beyond 4 to 5 different plant families in a sward, you have this kind of synergistic effect in terms of soil quality, moisture holding capacity, microbial activity, et cetera, et cetera. So we've been doing a lot of that recently, and that also goes hand in hand with kind of nutrient management and soil testing. So we're getting, macro and micronutrients and pH dialed in on our fields, using this rip sower to break up that plow pan, using forbs and diversifying species. So that's an example of.
So you've seen soil tests turn around by using this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, yes, part of that is because we are also amending our soils to kind of, so the idea is you can't just go out there and this stuff is like miracle technology. We're putting seed down. You've got to kind of foster, have everything there for that seed to thrive. And so we share that technology with 3 other farms, that piece of equipment. I'm actually going to pick it up today. So that's one piece that we've been doing. And then, of course, we focused a lot, and we've talked about just the pasture management and having goats out. I'm a huge believer in having ruminants, goats, sheep, cows, out on pasture harvesting their own feed, depositing their manure, trampling grass into the ground, so-called wasting it. All of that is kind of fostering life in the soil. And over 20 years, we've really seen some great benefits, as a result of a lot of these efforts. Back to sustainable agriculture, I think a big part of that is, I think myself and Kristen included, we kind of went into agriculture with this idea of wanting this lifestyle and, fostering life on our land, et cetera, et cetera. And I think what's often neglected is the income piece, and really focusing on the bottom line, because you can be the best land steward in the world, and if your farm goes bankrupt in 5 years, it's not going to help anyone, including your land. So I think that is a huge piece, and that often that can mean some compromises in different areas, whether it be lifestyle, or something might not be a perfect fit for the I can't really think of an example, but part of my motto is don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. And so and we've kind of been venturing into some farm consulting in the last couple of years, and that's something that I've really tried to get farms to really dial in and focus on, because and it's also so hard, because like when we started out, it's just you're just in the weeds. I mean, it's so hard to kind of poke your head out and identify bottlenecks and things that need to be addressed in order for you to make
growth
an income
to happen.
And not even growth maybe not. We've been very averse to growing, so we pretty much our entire career we've had more demand than supply. Mm-hmm. And my inclination has been to kind of go after that, and my wife has kind of put the bit in my mouth, and rightly so. And I think that has benefited us financially as well, because I think we have such a growth mindset in the United States. We're a capitalist culture, and if you've got a market, you get after it. And I don't think that's always the best thing to do, just not to mention lifestyle, but financially. And what we've done instead is really focus on relatively low volume and high margin. And I think when farms grow, they can get into this middle area where their margins are compromised and they're at this kind of middle volume state. I think I would argue that you either have to be low volume and high margin, or very high volume and low margin. You can capitalize on economies of scale at that large level, but through that transition, I think people often stall, and it can be very difficult. So it's been good to kind of pause in that staying small and simple. We've got a lean operation,
right?
And I think that's
just refining your systems and growing in profitability, not necessarily herd size.
Yeah, and we've always been pretty averse to debt, and very self-reliant. We built everything here, our house, our farm, all the buildings, plumbing, electric, and I think if we had taken out a big loan early on, we would have been crushed. I mean, we obviously had to take out some debt to purchase the land, et cetera, but I think that can be tricky, especially starting out.
Just looping back to the rip sower, how long have you been using that?
So I think this will be, so we started, I believe 3 years ago, we had a workshop on the farm, and we had one of the first iterations of the rip sower. So we did some ripping with that unit, and then we've done, maybe that was 4 years ago. So I think we've had our own unit. This will be the third year. So we've gone over most of our land that we can get that thing on at least twice, and we're going through a third pass in the next week or two.
So that's something that you do annually.
Yeah, I think there's one field that is just, we had a workshop 2 weeks ago on the virtual collars and, looking at soil quality. And one of our fields is just so beautiful that I think we're just gonna pause on that, because one of the dangers is you can actually when you subsoil you're doing some damage to the existing sward, and so we're kind of ripping up these beautiful deep-rooted plants. So I think we're going to pause on that. We might come back to it in subsequent years, but the aim is to go 3 and reassess 3 passes over 3 or 4 years and reassess.
Have you noticed any challenges or negatives to that practice?
No, I mean, I think it's there's a learning curve in terms of kind of dialing in the equipment properly, and but there's no downsides. I mean, I really think we've transformed a lot of our land. I think the best results we've had good results all around, but our as I mentioned before, our land primarily in our main farm, which is the 130 acres we bought originally, is very well drained, and I think the rip sower is particularly suited to that. The farm that we bought 15 years ago tends to be much heavier soils, and we've had the results haven't been so stunning, but still really good. Like we're going to be ripping that land again.
So even if it's not ideal, it's still beneficial.
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely, yeah. So no downsides. It's been great for us.
How deep is that set to go?
We are going about 18 to, I think we'll be going 20 inches. I think you can go up to, I think this unit does 24, perhaps even 30. I don't know exactly because we only have a 52 horse tractor, so we're limited in terms of how deep we can actually go. But the idea is you're going a little bit deeper each year.
Okay. Yeah.
And so we've been involved with I mentioned the Land Care Cooperative, but we've also been involved with a soils group with various farmers from UVM Extension. So we've done a lot of soil testing, a lot of work with penetrometers, which measures the hardness of the soil, and just really good results with that. We've also been experimenting with, we did a small trial with wollastonite, which is, it's a byproduct of mining. It's calcium silicate, so it's used as a liming agent. It's not quite as effective as lime, but it's interesting for a few reasons. One is that it doesn't give off carbon dioxide when it's neutralizing soil. So that's a cool thing. The other thing is that there's been a lot of research on feed quality of using calcium silicate. So we actually did a small trial where we applied calcium silicate to only half the field, and then we did some forage sampling with the help of UVM Extension and found and kind of ran those results through AI for statistical analysis. And we were finding statistically significant improvement in feed values from using this calcium silicate, which is super exciting.
Yeah.
And so, actually the Land Care Cooperative, the offshoot of that, there's another kind of company associated with that. They are in the process of developing a relationship with a mine in New York, and so hopefully that will be commercially available in Vermont
Is
soon.
that a powdered product?
So you spread it like we just rented a lime spreader, and just spread our land. We're gonna spread another load. We've had such good results. We're gonna do another load this this fall.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's the 10-year outlook look like for you and your farm?
So I am 54 right now. I would like, I think, selling, probably selling the milking herd in 10 years would probably make sense. I really enjoy what I'm doing right now. If I'm still loving it,
Right.
I'll probably just keep going. But that has some level of attraction. And I would say we would, when that happens, whether it's in 10 years or longer, we would get beef cattle and probably sheep. So we wouldn't be milking every day. We thankfully have this retail outlet as our store on site, our farm store on site. We would probably transition to selling lamb and some beef and pork in the store, maintaining our land. Continue. We also hay on our property, so that's likely.
That's hilarious. You're like, yeah. By the time I'm 65, we're gonna sell the milking herd, which is like, okay. And then spoken like a true farmer, but we're just dropping that enterprise. We're gonna pick up all these others.
Yeah. I mean, I love what we're doing, and I can see continuing.
Yeah, well, that's great.
On that role for at least another 5 to 10 years or longer. I mean, we'll see. I mean, part of it is, we've worked so hard to kind of build up our land. It would be a shame to not utilize that resource.
Yep. And then you run into new technologies like virtual fencing that saves you hours and energy. It's
Whoa. I mean, put some cows out with some collars and sheep. I mean, it's just, it's not that hard anymore.
Game changing.
We had that workshop that we had on the virtual fencing, that there's a headline in a local paper. It was phone farming, I think was the headline. So it's kind of
I mean,
technology.
It's not wrong.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
You've only been doing it a year, but I guess, and we've relied on our cell phone coverage. But has there been any systems down?
That's a good question. So this technology runs exclusively on the cellular network. There's also some Bluetooth features, but we have pretty poor cell connection up here. So I'm getting, one bar, maybe 2 bars on our farm. And interestingly, that hasn't changed. So our first year, 2024, what we'd have to do is load the pasture in the evening for the next day. So it would take that long. You'd set your paddock on the phone and transmit it to the goats. And so they're in the barn, and over the night they would receive that data.
Getting the update.
And so we were, for last season, we were still setting up net fence after their milking at night. So they get as I mentioned, they get a fresh paddock after every milking.
Yeah.
So we were setting up net fence. And I don't know what changed, whether it's the technology, whether they did something, No Fence in Norway did something on their end, but this season we've been able to utilize that No Fence system for both morning and evening, which has been
great.
It's been awesome. Yeah, it's been super, just been great.
So if you had a stronger cell signal, you could update that quickly.
Yeah, and so as I mentioned, right now we're pretty there's hardly any limitations. So what are that was a challenge, and so so that's something, if people are considering this technology, that's something to think about. But again, I would say that the absolute minimum coverage, we are now, for whatever reason, able to load morning and night. We do have some dead spots on our farm. Generally what we'll do is, it's 5 o'clock, we need to bring the goats in at 5:30 to get milked, and we can move them off of pasture on our phone. And by the time we get out there, they're ready to go. But if it's a dead spot, it just doesn't happen fast enough. So there's a Bluetooth feature that we can go down and release them via Bluetooth. One other, you mentioned disadvantages. I think one other thing we've struggled with is goats losing collars.
Oh.
So they're in these browse paddocks with saplings and trees, and they're rubbing stuff. And so it's not uncommon for us to, and they have kind of quick release so they don't get choked.
Yeah.
So we are losing kind of we're losing collars, and it has a feature to actually find, so you
Locate.
you can locate the collar, and you can send a beep, this little beep if you're close enough. So, however, if it's in a dead spot, we've actually lost 2 collars and have been unable to find them. So we've kind of moved to kind of bypassing that safety system and kind of clipping in the collars more permanently. So we're not constantly having to go and on these search and rescue missions for our collars.
Yeah, that's important. But at least they're staying together as a herd. So even if they go offline, they don't.
Yeah, so
The goat's not missing. The collar.
No,
is.
absolutely. And so if they don't have self-service, it's loaded on their collar, and then it's all GPS.
Yeah.
So they're contained. Another thing I'll mention about this technology is that it is more reliable in keeping the goats contained. So we have the world's most powerful energizer from Gallagher. It's I forget how many joules, well over 100 joules. So a lot of voltage on the fence, and goats, if they're agitated or whatever, many of them can still leap over the fence. And so that's just an added bonus for these collars, is they really are effective in containing those goats.
Are you able to use those collars to track data on the goat?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So we can open up our phone, and it has heat signatures where the goats have been in the paddock. So what I will do almost without fail is midday, and oftentimes they're in half to anywhere from a half acre to 2 acre paddock in these silvopastures. And so what I will do midday is I'll hop on my bike. I'm a huge bike fan, by the way, for farm efficiency. I bike all over my farm. It saves a ton of time, but I'll hop on my bike with a dog or 2 dogs. I'll drive out to the pasture. I'll get there in less than 5 minutes. It can be far away. I'll get the goats, bring them to the water, make sure that they're hydrated, because they can just get distracted and they're kind of off camping in a nice shady spot. And then I'll drive them. I'll kind of identify where they haven't been in the paddock and use the dogs to drive them into that location, so that they're utilizing that forage. And so goats are also, there's a lot of inertia. They'll eat in the morning. Oftentimes, if it's hot or whatever, they're just gonna hang.
Yeah.
They're just in the shade and they're just lounge there. But as soon as you move them into an area of good feed, they're oh, this is good. And I'll start eating. So it's really, and since we're not setting up fence every day, we have this extra pool of labor that we can draw on to actually spend 15 minutes at the most to go out there, make sure they're hydrated, push them into another area and have them eating. And and we've done a better job even from last year having the collars. So we've, as I said, we're 100% browse right now. And so our August production this year is even, higher, it's considerably higher than it was last year. So we're kind of, we're just kind of refining this technology and trying to get the most out of that. And part of that is as you're asking, identifying what hasn't been tapped in yet and pushing the animals into that location and getting them to eat.
Are those collars sophisticated enough to track this goat has been making this amount of yield, or keep tracking of vaccinations or stuff? I know some of the robo milkers for cattle is like that.
No, because that's a different technology, because they have a chip or whatever, and they're they can sample milk and production from that cow. But we're old school in the parlor.
More simple, yeah.
Yeah. So that's still, we're still tracking that.
Yeah.
Ourselves, but we can see where individual goats have been on the paddock, and and they're actually developing. I think it's a prototype right now, but you can actually see movement patterns over a certain paddock, not just where they've heat signatures over time, but like where they're moving, and it's pretty neat.
Yeah, it gives a whole nother perspective of analyzing your land and individual animals.
Yep. And a part of that, which I haven't mentioned, is we part of this grant and part of our just general interest is we are trying to identify native species that meet certain criteria for our goats. One, that, most importantly, that they're palatable to goats, like very palatable. They really want them and go after these plants. The second is that they have really high feed value, and the third is that they can withstand, browsing pressure. And so the one plant that stands out is cup plant, C-U-P, cup plant. It grows to anywhere from 8 to 12 feet high, has incredible yields. It's a super pollinator. There's these beautiful yellow flowers. And my wife, Kristen, actually started a little cup plant nursery. So the seed has to be stratified, meaning it has to go through a winter to germinate. So she laid down some black plastic, killed all of the weeds, fertilized it with our compost, and then started this nursery. And then we're taking those root balls, small little root masses, and planting those in various places around our farm. As one example, we're actually going to start taking some root cuttings and putting them in the rips from the rip sower. So we're looking at various different, Jerusalem artichoke, cup plant, a variety of different other plants to kind of diversify what we have out there and provide, top quality feed. Ideally, it's self-propagating as well.
Right.
So that's been kind of fun.
One thing that makes you and your farm unique is that I see you do things from two different perspectives, or almost two different centuries. You're using wireless virtual fencing, and at the same time you're like blacksmithing your own tools and using antique hay equipment. What's your kind of viewpoint or perspective on kind of doing things the old way and the new?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we haven't touched on is draft horses. We've utilized draft horses on our farm a lot over the past. We started about 18 years ago. So up until recently, our team's been getting older, but we cut all of our hay with a team of horses. We tedded with horses. We raked with horses. I was logging every winter. I still do log. I was logging commercially for a while with a team of horses, selling hemlock, shipping hemlock to Canada.
Wow.
So that's like as old school as you could possibly get. And so the view on that is, there's two. One is, the heart of it is, we love horses, and working with horses brings us satisfaction and joy. So there's the art of horsemanship.
Yeah.
And that's divorced from technology, but I would also argue that that is a very appropriate technology at our scale. So, we probably had, maybe less than $2,000 invested in haying equipment. And we just got started doing that. So that, it's a very low cost to start making hay, as opposed to, 20x or whatever.
Yeah.
And then also, we are we're, even back then we're a mixed power operation. So we've always had a tractor. So we bale with a tractor. But just one example, Kristen, what we'll do is we'll finish tedding, and oftentimes we'll harness up the horses, and Kristen will go out and start raking, and I'm coming back and getting the baler set up. And so while she's raking, I'm out there with the tractor, and I'm starting to bale. Oftentimes we're under pressure for weather reasons. Right. And then, she's done raking, she can harness up a team, get a hay wagon while I'm on the tractor. So you have this kind of synergistic effect with the two different forms of power. In terms of the woods, like horses in the woods are amazing, very low footprint. You can get in and out of areas where you can't with a tractor. So they're, on small acreage, it's I would argue a very appropriate technology. So there's that. At the same time, I've always been, I would say, an early adopter of technology. When YouTube came along, I was like, it's a freaking game changer. I mean, I started off trying to I didn't know anything about building. We had like a book that we would refer to and try to figure stuff out and asking lots of questions. Yeah. And so when YouTube came along, I just really started utilizing that. And then, the virtual fencing. And then I'm also, I use AI frequently for farm work and for a whole host of different, ways in terms of, troubleshooting mechanical issues on a tractor to,
right.
Electrical code, like what size breaker do I need for this amount of amperage, or, whatever. There's just accessing that technology, taking pictures of a barcode on a part and trying to identify that much more quickly than trying to get online and figure that out. Yep. AI is not an oracle. It's not flawless, but it's been a
helpful tool.
An absolutely helpful tool in terms of maximizing efficiency and doing the stuff that I don't really like. I don't like sitting at the computer. So if I can cut that time down, that's been great. So I'm totally open to adopting new technologies and also just relying on old technology like horses and dogs. Mm-hmm. No robot is going to replace a border collie ever. I'll stand by that. So I think it's a matter of judiciously choosing what works for your operation and kind of being open to different, modes of technology.
Yeah. I like following you on Instagram because it's almost a look into history when you're doing something with the horses. Do you see that or sharing of that technology as like showing a piece of history, or is that just you're passionate about horses and like to do it, so that's why you do it?
Yeah, I mean, there's some of the history part. I mean, I like to. The whole social media thing, I kind of doubled down on social media when the our farmers market folded. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, we gotta do something to, and so that ostensibly that's to kind of promote our products, et cetera. Okay, but man, that gets kind of tedious and boring. So I'm kind of posting stuff that I'm passionate about and that I'm into, and one of those, horses and dogs feature. Large in that sense. And then, I'm also a big advocate. I talked to you about some consulting work I've done. I'm a huge advocate for farmers, being self-reliant and developing a host of skills. I would argue that we cannot afford to be hiring, I've become much more efficient in a lot of these things, but when I started off, it might have taken me 4 to 5 times the amount of hours it would an electrician to wire up, my cheese facility or whatever. but my hourly rate was so low that I'm still kind of ahead of the game, and I'm, in the process, you're learning
get faster every time.
Yeah, you're learning a skill, and that can be utilized and like. When something goes wrong on my farm, like I built it, so I have an intimate knowledge of, what the system is, and I can kind of go in there and fix it. And the other piece with that too is like, man, it's getting harder and harder to actually find tradespeople to come onto the farm and do work, welding, mechanical, wiring, plumbing. I post some of that stuff as well, like what day to day, this is shit that has to get done, and in terms of maintaining and fixing equipment.
Part of the resiliency, if something breaks, you need to fix it because it's a key tool.
Absolutely. And it's also like that's one of the things I dig about farming is that, the problem solving part of it is, you're faced with these issues, and how do you kind of utilize resources on hand and ingenuity to kind of forge into new territory and make it work. So I like that stuff.
Mark Fashing, I was talking to him, and he really likes to see what you're up to too. And he's like, "Oh yeah, you got to talk to George." So he sent me some things that he was interested in talking about. So I'm looking at that.
All right. Yeah, he's a great dude. That's kind of that was my gateway into your podcast. Listening to Mark.
He's like farming with animals, tractors, and implements. Not too many youngsters doing that. He really likes your approach to resiliency, problem solving, fixing, repairing, learning key skills like welding, creating silvopasture browse, having cool systems for feeding goats in the barn. We didn't talk about that.
Yeah.
So what's the neat system that you've got for feeding the goats in the barn?
I kind of came up with this hay feeder that is, it's like a piece of plywood on a table. So you have a 4x8 sheet of plywood. You can envision that as a kind of a low table, and then you can envision kind of a stud wall made out of 2x4s that surround this table, almost like a caged table. And so the goats have to, put their head into that feeder. These are goat feeders to eat, and goats love to pull hay out and step all over it, and hay is expensive, so it's been a constant battle in terms of like what is the feeding system. And there's been so many iterations, but that has been the best. And then recently we've gone, last year was the first year we started feeding wrapped round bales. So we don't put up all of our own hay. We don't have enough land. And it was increasingly hard. We're a certified organic farm. It was increasingly hard to find certified organic square bales, where the round bale market is much more broad in terms of availability. So, at any rate, I built instead of a 4x8 sheet, I put two 4x8 sheets. So I've got 8x8 sheet. Again, that's on the ground, if you will. So you've got this platform surrounded by a stud wall that the goats can put their heads in, and there's a piece of plywood like along the bottom of the wall so that they can't pull feet out and step on it. And then I have my two square bale feeders, as wings off of that 8x8 round feeder, so I can take that and throw hay into those feeders.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what he's.
Yeah. Nice. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give yourself when you started?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think advice number one: don't buy goats right off the bat. I mean,
you get a roof over your head first.
Yeah, like that was just. I mean, there's so many dumb things we did. We spent a lot of time messing with those goats when we could have been, more efficiently building our farm up. And there's that. We made, there's so many mistakes we made. The original building, our facility was a stick built or a pole barn. I eventually tore all the guts out of that and had to rebuild that. Start off like building things the right way. I guess I didn't know the right way until later.
Right.
I think we followed some of the things, our own advice. That some of the tenets were, we don't want to start off with a lot of debt. We wanted to be, if things went south, we could kind of walk away without losing our home and our shirt. And stay the course. That would be my advice to my old self. And I think more or less we did that.
Do you have any other different advice that you'd give to a young farmer now?
I'm a huge advocate. I'm a huge advocate of value added. I think it's very difficult and certainly not impossible. But to step into kind of commodity agriculture and make that sustainable and profitable. I think if you can develop a unique product that kind of gives you a little more leeway to command a higher price and to find, a marketing niche. I think that's super important. So part of my advice would be to, really consider value added as a viable option, or certainly an offshoot to the main operation. I would say, limit as much as possible the amount of debt that you go into. I think focus on skills and self-reliance as opposed to hiring stuff out right from the get-go. I think there's a great model to grow slowly, and that goes hand in hand with being debt averse. You're not going to get your farm off and running and
with limited cash flow.
Able to sustain a family right off the bat, and I think that's okay. That's just my own personal experience. Obviously, there are different viewpoints on that, but I think those are the some of the main ones. The other piece, huge, is where are you going to sell your product? How far is your market? I think developing a wholesale market. I think a lot of farms, go right into a farmer's market, and I don't always think that's necessarily the best path. It's a real low, there are low obstacles into getting into a market as opposed to like really developing a wholesale market and approaching vendors and restaurants, and that can be kind of a slog, whereas you can pay your fee and set up your booth and start selling stuff. But I think the opportunity cost of that can be pretty high when you look at the fees associated with going to a farmer's market, when you look at your labor and transportation costs. You've got to be pulling in a good amount of money to really, I think, make that a profitable venture. Yeah. Because every hour that you're at that market and preparing for, and that's not even counting the prep that goes into market. that's arguably time that could have been spent, developing other marketing aspects. And I think so. That's something to consider for farms. We started off doing 3 or 4 markets. Oof. Yeah, it's crazy because we just, that's what we were struggling and just trying to figure it out. But right. I think back to my advice to my younger self, that would have been, advice would be get into some wholesale markets and make that the mainstay of your income. Yeah. And perhaps mix in a really good, profitable market with a value-added product, like sausages or something else. But yeah, so I think those are some pieces that I would advise.
Yeah.
young farmers to do.
And that was the Farmer's Share. I hope you enjoyed this episode with George of Doe's Leap Farm. The Farmer's Share is supported by a grant offered by the USDA Specialty Crop Block Program from the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food, and Markets. This funding helps to cover some of my time and travel in order to produce this podcast until March of 2026. The USDA Agricultural Marketing Service supports projects that address the needs of U.S. specialty crop growers and strengthens local and regional food systems. I have no doubt that this podcast will meet those needs and help educate growers to support the industry. If you enjoy this show and want to help support its programming, you can make a one-time or reoccurring donation on our website by visiting thefarmershare.com/support. We also receive funding from the Vermont Vegetable and Berry Growers Association. The VVBGA is a nonprofit organization funded in 1976 to promote the economic, environmental, and social sustainability of vegetable and berry farming in Vermont. Their membership includes over 400 farms across Vermont and beyond, as well as about 50 businesses and organizations that provide products and services of all types to their members. Benefits to members include access to the VVBGA listserv to buy, sell plants and equipment, share farming information, and tap the vast experience of our growers. Access the Community Accreditation for Produce Safety, also known as CAPS. This program is designed for growers, by growers, to help you easily meet market and regulatory food safety expectations. You can access the VVBGA's Soil Health Platform, where you can organize all the soil tests and create and store your soil amendment plans and records. Access to webinars for growers in the VVBGA annual meeting, an email subscription to the Vermont Vegetable and Berry newsletter, camaraderie, enhanced communication, and fellowship among commercial growers. Memberships are on a per farm, per calendar year basis, and annual dues this year are $80. These funds pay for the organization's operating costs and support educational programs and research projects. These funds also support projects that address grower needs around ag engineering, high tunnel production, pest management, pollinators, produce safety, and soil health. Become a member today to be a part of and further support the veg and berry industry. You can visit thefarmershare.com to listen to previous interviews or see photos, videos, or links discussed from the conversation. If you don't want to miss the next episode, enter your email address on our website and you'll get a note in your inbox when the next one comes out. The Farmer's Share has a YouTube channel with videos from several of the farm visits. We're also on Instagram, and that's where you can be reminded about the latest episode or see photos from the visit. Lastly, if you're enjoying the show, I'd love it if you could write a review. In Apple Podcasts, just click on the show, scroll down to the bottom, and there you can leave 5 stars and a comment to help encourage new listeners to tune in. I'd also encourage you to share this episode with other grower friends or crew who you think would be inspiring for them. Thanks for listening.